religious freedoms are one that are innate in who we are, in how we see ourselves, how we view ourselves, how we are as a city, as a state, and as a country. And obviously, it's one of our most fundamental human rights, the right to freedom of religion and freedom from religious persecution. In the city of Miami, we are an incredibly diverse city. We're a city that is not only diverse from the perspective of the cultures that we see here, but we're certainly religiously diverse. And we're a city that wants to do everything that we can to protect and uphold the integrity of religious freedoms, and also protect all the different religions from discrimination of any kind, from persecution of any kind. Unfortunately, what we've seen across the country is incredibly startling. We have seen people perpetuate hate crimes based on religion, and have engaged in a variety of different horrendous acts which reverberate across the country and have forced cities like ours, and we're very lucky and grateful that we haven't seen any one of these tragedies in a grand scale like has been seen in other parts of the country. But it still forces us to look within ourselves and see what is happening in our country. Why are people so angry? Why are they so upset? And why are they driven to violence? Particularly because someone may think differently than someone else. Someone may believe something different than someone else believes. I've always believed my entire life that the fact that there are a multitude of different faiths is something that should be enriching. It's something that should create collaboration. We should always be seeking to find truths wherever they may be found, whether they be in our own faith or through cross-pollination and discussions of other faiths. I think something that we don't do enough of, frankly, is in an appropriate and constitutional way, find ways to allow government and government officials to interact with faith-based organizations. And what I mean by that is, convening, acting as a convener and understanding that, different faiths have the ability to influence a tremendous amount of people. And usually, and for many people, their faith or religion is the one place where they find positive messages, and where, as someone who may be struggling with an addiction, with some mental disorder, may be able to find advice, may be able to find comfort. And so the religious institutions in our city are incredibly important. They're incredibly important to the vitality of our city. Whenever we have something that maybe doesn't even involve religion per se, we call upon our religious leaders because they are leaders and because our community follows them. We call on them to press conferences oftentimes, and we ask them to be the voice of the community and to help quell what at times can be an increase in anxiety or an increase in a feeling of injustice. And that's something that's been extremely successful. So collaborating with the religious community is something that, as mayor, I've tried to do. I've wanted to have an interfaith council that we meet on a regular basis because, again, I feel that it's not only beneficial to me as a public official who always wants to be guided by the principles that most religions are guided by: peace, prosperity, treating people with respect and kindness. I think that all faiths, or many faiths, agree that those are the bedrocks of what human behavior should be. And so to be mayor of a city that embraces the diversity of our faiths is something that to me is incredibly important. And understanding that I came from a country, and my parents really came from a country. I was born here in the United States. My parents came from a country where religious freedom is not allowed. There is a tremendous amount of repression of religious freedoms in many countries throughout this hemisphere and throughout the world. And so, sometimes I think we take for granted the fact that in this country, we have the ability to practice our faith most of the time without much impediment. And certainly there are those who, for whatever reason, are driven by hate and want to hurt and destroy people of faiths that are not theirs. They're driven by prejudice. which it could be religious prejudice, but it could also be, obviously cultural prejudice. And, we have to do better as a society, I think. And I think our religion, we often subordinate it. And what we're allowing to shape our conversation is social media, is obviously the press, and currently what is a more polarized press than ever, and certainly a more polarized politics than ever. I often tell people that I've never seen an election where, and this is, I'm going to make a nonpartisan statement, where irrespective of who you like, what candidate you like, the supporters of that candidate believe that the supporters of the other candidate are bad people. And I think that to me is really troubling, because we can disagree. Some people believe that, our government needs to be more involved, needs to help collectively lift people up. And some people believe that, simply government needs to do is leave us alone and allow us to make our individual choices. And if we're allowed to do that, we'll be able to succeed or fail on our own. And I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer. I think we also fall into this false construct that one person is right and the other person is wrong. And I think we oversimplify things. And I think when that happens, you can allow hate and bitterness to seep in, and that can affect religious freedoms, because religion, like politics, two things that you probably shouldn't talk at the dinner table about, are definitely things that create a tremendous amount of passion in people. And sometimes that passion is directed in an appropriate fashion. And oftentimes, unfortunately, we see that passion directed in a very inappropriate fashion. And obviously, with the prevalence of the ability for people to weaponize themselves, essentially, we have a very difficult and dangerous cauldron at times. And so for me as mayor, I feel very honored to be invited on this panel. I think it's you have a distinguished panel of people who are far more qualified and far more scholarly than I will ever be, to be able to provide insights into how a country like ours and cities like mine should continue to foster religious freedom and human rights as a way of creating a more perfect union and a more perfect city.